Hi everyone, this side Dr. Gurbinder Singh Brar, working as an associate professor in Department of Computer Science and Engineering, School of Engineering and Technology, City University. Today I'm going to explain a very recent topic, that is empathy mapping. This is one of the important parameter of design thinking. So in this I'm going to explain you what is empathy mapping and user research, and how this parameter is important in terms of design thinking method. So in design thinking we empathize other person. So in empathy mapping, the key points that I am going to discuss is sympathy, then we go to empathy, then what is the difference between sympathy and empathy, then empathize, empathy map, how does an empathy map look like, why do we use empathy map, theming, what is user research, goals of user research, or various methods of user research, and summary. So starting with sympathy. So sympathy basically involves the feelings, the compassion, sorrows, sadness or pity for other person who are facing some difficult circumstances, who is in tough times. So when you feel sorry for someone, when you feel sorry for someone's loss, you have sympathy for that person. So when someone loses a loved one, it is common to feel sympathy towards that person and their families in order to sympathize that person. So showing condolence toward other is also an example of sympathy. Empathy is a stronger than sympathy. Basically sympathy and empathy both are similar terms, but empathy is more stronger as compared to sympathy. It goes beyond feelings, it goes beyond compassion for someone's loss. Basically empathy is the ability to put yourself in place of another's and understand someone else feeling, how someone is feeling, how someone is facing some circumstances, by identifying with them. So with empathy you view the situation through the another person's eyes to get a real environment, to get a real sense of what their experience is like, what he is in which kind of situation. Just like alpha testing, that is happens at user's end, what a user is expecting from the software, what user is facing, which kind of problems. So it is exactly same as the alpha testing. So if we talk in terms of sympathy versus empathy, so sympathy is basically other's perspective, and on the other hand side empathy is you put yourself into another's place, into another's environment, and feel what other person is feeling, what other person is thinking about that scenario, that situation. So if I am saying I am sorry, that must hurt, so it is an example of a sympathy. So empathy is you just understand another person by empathize yourself into their role, then only you are able to genuinely understand what kind of circumstances he or she is facing, what kind of scenario, what kind of problem the other person is facing. So in order to understand the environment of another person in better way, the you empathy or empathize is more stronger as compared to sympathy. To understand the environment of another person, or the person who is in tough times is the example of empathy. According to Jack Dorsey, the co-founder of Twitter, so if you want to build a product, if you want to deploy a product into the market, and that product is very relevant to end users, very relevant to end customers, then you need to put yourself in their shoes. Only then you are able to understand the end user requirement, how end user is feeling about the product. Before empathize, there are some do's and don'ts. So during empathizing, you need to get deep into the user and to better understand them, to conduct research, to get the personal grasp of the user needs, user problems. Otherwise, you are unable to realize what kind of problems, what is the actual need of end term. If you're not going deeper inside the user, if you're not going or conducting research at the end user level, then it's very difficult to trace out, to locate the needs, the problems that end user faces. Okay, so you need to listen and end user, your customers, your stakeholders open-mindedly, without putting your thoughts, without putting your biases. So if you go deep and conduct a research and you listen your end term, end users, customers, stakeholders, then only you are able to empathize, then you are able to find out the need of end user or stakeholders. So what are the don'ts you need to consider while carrying out the research, while understand the genuineness, while understand the end user problems? So during the conduct of research, you need to drop your assumptions, you need to drop your biasness, you need to drop your thoughts, you need to drop your genuine reason. Otherwise, you are unable to get a real time feedback from the stakeholders. So try to avoid focusing on the points that confirms your bias. Try to avoid the points that you are agree with. Try to drop the ideas, drop your assumptions while taking the feedback from the actual stakeholder of the product. If you go for these do's and don'ts, then ultimately it will help to build a product, to build a new product, or if you want to enhance, or if you want to add, or if you want to update your existing product and you want to deploy in the market. That definitely these do's and don'ts help you to deliver, to deploy a product which is actually according to the requirement of end user, which is actually a customized product that actually our stakeholder is looking for. So, well, as a user, I would not do that. So these are some scenarios when customer is going for buy a product. These are some ideas that comes in the mind of the user. So it is my product, it's my project, I don't know what users think about the product. So ultimately, when we are going to deploy a product in the market, then should be the aim of our development team, that our users are not going to worry about the product, are not going to worry about that. So empathy mapping is basically a guide to getting inside a user's head, to getting deep into user's mind in order to understand the end user needs, in order to understand the problem of our stakeholder, in order to deploy a product, deploy a customized product to our stakeholders. The empathy mapping plays a prominent role to build a product that is up to mark, that is a customized product that meets end user requirements. So why empathy mapping? Why we need to go for empathy mapping? So design thinking team basically use this concept to understand the end users, because in actual we don't know what the end user would do or how they think. So either we go for PhD degrees, either we go for so many trainings, but we can say there is no amount of expertise, there are no amount of studies, there are no amount of training that tells us what is going on in users' heads, what is going inside the mind of end users, what are the stakeholders' requirements, what are going in the mind of stakeholders. So we can just research again and again, we can just observe, ask and surmise. And when we take the time to better understand them, to better understand our real users, to better understand our stakeholders, then it means we can empathize. So empathy map is basically a collaborative visualization. It's basically a tool, it's basically a technique that captures knowledge about our end users' behavior, our end users' attitudes, our end users' morality, ethics, what our end user, what our stakeholder is thinking about, what is going inside the mind of our stakeholders. So basically it's a useful tool to help our design team, to help our development team to better understanding the end user needs, and ultimately it helps in decision making, it aids to take a better decision to deploy a product in the market. It is a method that uses optimal techniques or optimal strategies or wise strategies to build a customized product, to build a better product, to build a service prior to deploy a service, prior to deploy a product in a real time scenario in a market. The empathy map are splitted or decomposed into 4 quadrants. One is says, thinks, does and feels, with the user, with the end user, with the stakeholders in the middle. So it helps to gain a 360-degree perspective of end user, what our user says, what our user thinks, what the actions our end user taken and feels about the products, about the services that we are going to deploy in the market. So how does an empathy map look like? So this is the pictorial representation of empathy map, where user, where an stakeholder is in the middle. Okay, it takes direct statements from the user. So our first quadrant is says. In says, it takes a direct statements. It is the actual version of our stakeholder, what directly our end user says about the product, right? So this section basically contains direct quotes from the stakeholders that have been gathered, that have been collected from the research phase or from the previous data that already been there. So it might features the direct statements. For example, I need a smartphone with a long lasting battery, I need a phone with more graphics, I don't understand where to buy a product from, whether I need to go for amazon.com, whether I need to go for flipkart.com, or whether I need to buy a product from the site directly. Okay, so these are the direct statement that comes in the mind of user prior to use a service, prior to deliver buy a product. The second phase, the second quadrant of our empathy map is things. So this quadrant captures, gathers what the user is thinking throughout the experience. It asks itself from the quality research gathered, what occupies the user thoughts, what matters to the users, what is actually going inside the mind of user, what actually user thinks about the product. There may be a chance that there are similar content, there are similar statements that comes in first quadrant as well as in this second quadrant, but during thinking the user may or may not be willing to vocalize the statements. But on the other hand side, in first quadrant, user directly give their statements, but in second phase he might be thinking about the same scenario, but he is not willing to vocalize the same. He try to understand what they are reluctant to share, are they unsure, they are self-conscious, polite, or afraid to tell others something. So in this phase our user is thinking, but he is not able to vocalize what he actually thinks about the product. Then comes to a next phase, next quadrant, that is third quadrant, does. So in does, this phase demonstrate the actions that the user taken. So this phase encloses the action that user takes. What does the user physically do? Whether he is going to a physical store to buy a mobile, whether he is going to a Amazon site to go to buy a product, how does the user go about doing it? If he is unable to using the site, he may refresh the site again and again, or he shops around to compare prices. He go for Amazon, he go for Flipkart, he go for some another site in order to just compare the prices on the similar websites. And the last phase, the last quadrant is feel. This is the actual phase where the end user feels. It contains the emotions of our stakeholders, what actually our users are worried about, what does our users are excited about, what our user feel about the product, how does the user feel and experience. These things matter in fourth quadrant. For example, if the page of the Amazon website is quite slow, it means our stakeholder is impatient. If there are too many contradictory prices on different websites, there's a different price on Amazon, different price on Flipkart, different price on some another website, then we can say our user is confused where he need to go for. Okay, if and in some cases our stakeholder is worried whether he is doing something wrong. Okay, it means our stakeholder is worried, he don't want to, he want to buy phone but he is not in a real scenario, in a comfort zone in order to buy a product. So here are some examples of university admissions, how empathy map fall or helps in order to increase university admissions. So after getting information in first phase, second phase, third phase and fourth quadrant, fourth phase, then our next process is how to analyze this information, how to re-encapsulate this information, how to classify this information. So this whole concept to optimize this information and to reach at certain decision and to reach at certain conclusion, we need to do theming. This concept is called theming. So while we complete the information from the first phase, the next step is theming. In theming process, three things being done. One is classification. So in classification, we classify the different statements, the different scenarios, the different problems into different categories. So after getting data from end users, we classify the problems into different ways. Okay, after classifying problems, we put into similar kinds of problems in one module, similar kinds of problems in another batch, similar kind of problems into another sub batch. Okay, so after classifying, after categorizing, after differentiating the end user needs, the end user problems, then the next step is to grouping them together. One kind of problems comes under one group, another category of problems comes into second group, another category of problems comes to in third categories. So after classifying, after grouping, then the next thing comes into front is which problem needs more attention, which problems wants more priority. Then we finalize our priority. These are the problems that we need to handle firstly. These are the category we need to taken seriously on a second mode, then third, then fourth, and so on. So this whole concept, classifying, categorizing, grouping, then fixing priority of the problems, of the needs of end user or the stakeholders. So this whole concept is called theming. So when theming is being done, then we focus on the key areas that needs more attention, that is on highest priority, that is on our top priority. Okay, then we look at the major problems behind that and try to solve, try to incorporate in our product that we are going to deliver, that we are going to deploy in the market. So prior to deploy, prior to deliver that product in the market, we need to focus on the key areas, we need to focus on the major points where we are lacking behind. So here we comes ki what is the importance of empathy mapping in decision thinking. So first one is the keen understanding of user behavior. It helps to develop better understanding of users environment, users interest, what are the major goals of user, in which environment our user is residing, whether he or she is able to utilize our product, he is or she is able to utilize our services. So this is the most important aspect in order to deep understanding, in order to keen understanding of user behavior. The second perspective is structure of the product. So it helps to business to structure their product according to the end user requirement, according to the end user needs. Then we are able to make a product, make a customized product which actually suits the end user. The third aspect of this empathy map in decision thinking is it aids in decision making. It helpful in decision making for business models, for business products, for user exchange designers. So what is user experience? So user experience is every aspect of the user's interaction with the product, every aspect that a user is facing with the product. What are the end user needs? What are the end user problems? What are the end user interaction with the company, with the product, with the services that contributes to the overall perceptions and satisfactions of using it? This is called user experience. So if we want to 100% satisfy our end customers, our stakeholders, then user experience plays a vital role to deploy, to deliver, to update our existing product according to end users' minds. So basically the user experience helps to understand user behaviors. What are the user needs and user motivations? There are so many methods, so many techniques, using observations, using feedbacks. The basic goal behind user research is to prioritize the user's requirement. So user's requirement should be our top priority. If we will take user requirement on the top priority, then definitely our design thinking team, our development team will deploy, will build a product that will actually user needs, that will actually according to the users need, So research team, user research helps to act as an interface. It acts as a bridge to minimize the gap between the developer and the end users. So in order to bridge the gap between the developing team and the stakeholders, the user research plays a prominent, very critical role. So what are the goals of a user search? The first is to understand who are our end users, who are going to use our service, who are going to use our product. Second is better understand the requirements of the users. The third is we need to focus on the behavior, the attitude of the user. Third one is improve customer satisfaction through loyalty and increase profit. Additional requirement of the end user, what our end user is looking for. For example, he want to pay through credit card, he want to pay through UPI. So we need to keep in mind all these kind of financial options, all these kind of payment options, so that we 100% satisfy our end user customers. So there are so many ways in order to grasp, in order to collect the end user requirement, end user needs, or to deep go inside the stakeholders. The first one is contextual inquiry. Okay, so this is a very important method. It helps to understand the end user by using the end user requirement. This is the method where our research team feel the end user environment, how our end user feeling about the product by empathizing at going their environment. So contextual inquiry prominent method in order to observe, in order to understand, in order to simulate end user natural environment. Second method is interviews. You can go for interviews, you can go for face-to-face interaction. It may be happen prior to deploying a product, it may be done after delivering a product into the market, in order to understand user feelings, in order to understand user requirements, in order to understand user needs. The next one is diary studies. It helps to track the user behavior in order to understand the user's pattern. For example, if we go to a normal market, then they use the customer's pattern, how customer go and take the things in a normal day. So if customer buy a milk product, then he definitely go for bread, then he definitely go for butter, then he definitely go for eggs. So this is the trend, this is the pattern that we can empathize through diary studies. Another method is user group. If we want to target a quantity of audience, okay, then this method helps to grab the group of users needs. You can you can give some common topic to the group of people and ask about their views, ask about their thoughts, what they want, what they expect in that product. Okay, so after getting so many points from the common target, from the group of people, you are able to incorporate those requirements, those needs, those suggestions into your product prior to deploy that product in the market. Another one is usability testing. So this is a simulation kind of testing that happens in a lab, that happens in a simulation environment, in order to how our user is using our product, how user is going through various steps in order to use our services. Okay, it helps to evaluating our product by performing task, starting from buying a thing, starting from using a thing. It helps to track all the modules that our product has. Okay, so it actually provides a simulation environment where end user feels like he or she is using a product in a real time environment. But it is just a usability testing, it is just a simulation, and it helps to better understand the product prior to deploy to a stakeholder. Then surveys, questionnaires, if you want to go for quantitative research, if you want to go for qualitatives, and if you want to take some suggestions, if you want to take some feedback from end user, then surveys, questionnaires, you can go for a number of questions and hand over to your end users, to your stakeholders, what they are expecting, what they are thinking, what are their needs, what are their problems, what they are lacking, what they are finding in their product. So surveys and questionnaires plays a vital role in order to understand the better requirement, the need of end user. Then card sorting is another important method of user search. For example, you Amazon company want to deploy a different kind of products onto their website, and how they arrange different categories, different architecture, different organization of their products, how they deploy their modules, sub modules, then subcategories, then subcategories. So better way is card sorting. So you just give different categories to their audience and ask them to arrange in some manner, to arrange in some manner, to arrange in some order, to arrange in some classifying, to arrange in some architecture method. So according to their priority, according to their architecture, you can use your website according to the category, according to the way our actual group, our actual close-ended customer sorted. This is the better way to categorize, to architect the categories onto their website. So it helps to prioritize, to architect, to organize, to sequence, to arrange your products into categories, subcategories, subsections in a better way, and it is actual according to the requirement of end user. At the end, I would recapitulate. An empty map is basically a visualization tool, is basically a method that ensures our product team, our development team to understand user needs, what are the user desires, what are the user feelings about the product, about the services. Okay, the primary goal of empathy mapping is to bridge a gap between our development team and the end users. User experience basically sets out to identify a problem that a product or service needs to solve to optimize user experience. User exchange can be done through different methods: interviews, surveys, focus groups, data analysis, and reports. So basically, to re-encapsulate, I would like to say that this is a very important tool in order to understand the user behavior, user needs, user feelings, user desires prior to deploy a product, prior to update your existing product and deploy the same into a real work environment, deploy the same in a real market. Thank you about the same.